Hello everyone and welcome to Youth Today. Now today, Youth is going to be looking a little bit different. We're changing the format a little bit of Youth. And so today we're going to be watching this YouTube together, and then we're going to be going onto Zoom, and we're going to go into some small groups and we're going to chat a little bit about the message. We're going to play another game, and we're probably going to we're going to have some time to pray together. And yeah, it's just a great time to catch up and to spend time together. But before we head into our message, we're going to start with a game, as always, because I love a game. And today I'd like to introduce you to a guest. I'd like to introduce you to the one and only Sarah Wallace. Say hi, Sarah.
Hi.
So Sarah is joining us today. Sarah, for those of you, most of you will know Sarah. She comes to Youth every single week, doesn't miss a week. She makes everyone laugh. She's good fun, and we love having Sarah around. But those of you who maybe don't know Sarah that well, we thought before we go into this game that Sarah would share a few things about herself. So Sarah, how old are you? What school do you go to? And then share some fun facts about yourself as well.
Okay. I am 16 years old. I go to King Edward BI School, Kegs. And I love to bake, all the time, and cooking as well, yes. I've also climbed up Mount Snowdon in Wales without going on the train, way up and way down. I'm impressed with myself for doing that. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. And your favourite food?
Pizza.
Nice, that's good. Favourite drink?
Oh.
Actually, don't share that because we might be talking about that later. Ignore that. The game that we're playing today is called Match the Genius, and Sarah is the genius today. And so we're going to be showing on the screen a few different things. So it will be two options, and you've got to pick and write in the comments on YouTube what you think Sarah would pick. So it's not what you would pick, it's what Sarah, our genius, would pick. Okay, so we're going to start, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you, and you will see the options. Now we're going to go through it twice. The first time, Sarah's going to write down her answer, and you guys will have to write down your answers. And the second time, Sarah's going to share what she thinks is her favourite. So take a look at this. So the first one that we're going to be looking at is burrito or taco. Now we don't really have tacos in the UK very much, but I have had a taco and I do really enjoy them. But it's not about me today, it's about Sarah. So what do you think Sarah would like best? The second one for today is, does she like steak or chicken best? Steak or chicken? I don't know if you can see Sarah's face right now, but she doesn't look impressed with either of them. No, raw meat doesn't look great, does it? Number 3 is this: a chocolate gatto or a pie. So a chocolate gatto or a pie. Which would be Sarah's favourite? Next one is a MacBook Pro or a Dell. So it's Apple basically, or everything else.
Oh.
It's hard because if you don't have an Apple, it's hard to choose. But you will decide, won't you, Sarah? Have you made a decision? Okay. The next one is, if you were going out, would you pick some sunglasses or would you pick a funky hat? So that's sunglasses or a hat. The next one, Coca-Cola or popcorn. So if you went to the cinema and you could only pick one of these, which would you pick? Oh, that's a really hard one. I'd want both.
Yeah.
But Sarah's going to decide, and you've got to try and pick the one that Sarah would choose. So Coca-Cola or popcorn. The next one, pizza. It's one of Sarah's favourite foods. And but is her favourite pepperoni or is it ham and pineapple? It's quite a controversial one, this. Lots of people are very anti-pineapple and ham. yeah, I actually really like it, but I don't choose it because I feel like everyone judges me if I do. Right, the next one is Pepsi or Coca-Cola. What's Sarah's favourite? First one, burritos or tacos? Which did you pick?
Oh, I picked tacos.
Did you? When have you
Yeah.
had tacos before?
Never. I've had neither, but I always want to try a taco over a burrito.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Probably never had either. Okay, if you were to go out to a restaurant, would you pick steak or chicken?
Now that was a hard one because I love both of them, but it had to be chicken.
Chicken, okay. Very good, very good. The next one, chocolate gatto or pie?
Chocolate gatto.
It is better. It is much better. I agree with you. MacBook or Dell?
Everybody's gonna hate me for this, but Dell all the way.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
why? What's your reasoning?
I don't really like Apple products.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Ah, good on you. Hold firm. Right, next one, sunglasses or a hat?
Sunglasses all the way.
Yeah. And Coca-Cola or popcorn?
Popcorn.
Nice. And a pizza, pepperoni pizza or ham and pineapple?
Pepperoni all the way.
Is good. And then Pepsi or Coca-Cola?
Now, I would have picked Coca-Cola, but I have to pick Pepsi because it's like, oh, so good.
Really?
Yeah.
You are the only person I know who would choose Pepsi over Coca-Cola. Okay, but that's great. Thank you so much, Sarah. Really appreciate you coming on Zoom with me to record this. And I hope we have a winner. Who knows Sarah the best? So we'll see you soon. And we're now going to head on into the message for this week.
Hello everyone, it is so great to have you join us today. Big thank you to Sarah for getting involved in that little game as well. Now I want to wish you all a very happy new year. The new year is here, and so I want to ask you, what is your New Year's resolution? Do you have a New Year's resolution? Have you already broken your New Year's resolution? Why don't you write in the comments if you have one this year or have had one previously? So last year, people accomplished pretty amazing things. They won championships, set world records, released hit movies, and there were loads of different #1 singles as well. And that made me wonder, how many of these incredible achievements started out as New Year's resolutions? Now, many of you will know that I love Taylor Swift. And about 7 years ago, she released a song called I Knew You Were Trouble. Shortly after it was released, this video went viral. I don't know what goals Taylor had when writing this song, but I'm guessing Get Turned Into a Goat meme wasn't one of them. Has this ever happened to one of your goals? Now, I don't mean the screaming goat thing. I mean, have you ever set a goal but had your plan interrupted or sidetracked? It happens. Maybe because you got a little bit lazy, or you lost focus, or other responsibilities took priority, or maybe you got stuck and you weren't sure how to make it happen. When I was about 14, I really wanted to learn how to play the guitar, and my youth worker at the time gave me his old guitar, so I started learning. I started out pretty awful, but eventually I got better and I learned how to play some worship songs, a few Taylor songs, and I was really getting into it. But then I got lazy. I couldn't be bothered to practice, and now if you give me a guitar, I might be able to remember 4 chords. I lost sight of my goal. Now, in case you couldn't tell, we're talking about goals, how to set and achieve big goals. Maybe your goal is to raise your grades, or learn a new skill, or get accepted into college, or get a job, get healthier, maybe get TikTok famous. If I were to ask you about your goals, I'm guessing some of you would be able to share your goals immediately. And some of you would have to think about it for a while. And then some of you would say, I don't really have any goals just yet. And that is absolutely fine. That's okay. But I want to ask some questions, and I want you to respond to them in the comments by adding a little emoji or by saying yes or no, so we know where we're at. So the questions are, do you have any goals right now? Do you have any goals for your future? If you could change the world for the better, would you want to? Do you ever feel like you need help achieving your goals? Do you need help setting goals in the first place? And would you be content with having no goals for your life? Do you know, it's normal to feel like you're struggling to set or achieve goals. When you're a teenager, you're still figuring out who you are and who you want to be. And it's hard to think far in the future. It's hard to get or stay disciplined, and you don't have total independence or control over your life or your time. But even though setting and achieving goals can be difficult at your age, I'm convinced that you can change the world. Not someday, but today. And it all starts with the goals that you set. Now, I sent all of you a little letter this week, and with that came a picture of a goat. Some of you might be wondering why. And it's because I want you to write down a goal, not just any goal, a goat goal, a big, bold, greatest of all time kind of goal. Maybe your goat goal is about what you want to accomplish. Maybe it's about what you want to become. Or maybe it's about what you want to contribute to the world. And at the end of our time together, I'm going to ask you to reflect on that goal and either change it, add to it, or make it more specific. But for now, just write down whatever you're thinking. Today, I'm going to introduce you to someone from the Bible who had a big goal of his own. And I want us to see what we can learn from him. So we're going to be looking at Nehemiah. So a little bit of background. We're going to be looking at a book from the Old Testament of the Bible. That's the part that was written just before Jesus and is the story of the Jewish people. The book we're reading is called Nehemiah, and it was written by a guy named Nehemiah. About 140 years before this book begins, the Jewish people were conquered by an enemy army that took control of Jerusalem. They destroyed the city, burned down the temple, which is where the Jewish people worship God, and sent many of God's people into exile. Through the prophets, God promised to restore and rebuild Jerusalem and that God's people would return. But this was a devastating loss for the Jewish people. Can you imagine what it would be like to be invaded by an enemy army and then kicked out of your own home, city, or country? You'd likely lose friends, you'd lose family members, all in the process. And if you survived, you'd be forced to adopt a new language, laws, and customs. And for generations, the Jewish people were heartbroken about their lost city, temple, culture, and community. After Jerusalem was destroyed, a new king took control. Some of God's people began to return to Jerusalem. They were looking for ways to rebuild what they had lost, but it was a really long process. About 140 years after Jerusalem was destroyed, the story of Nehemiah begins. And Nehemiah had only ever known a Jerusalem occupied by enemy armies. Nehemiah was passionate about seeing Jerusalem restored, but he wasn't just anyone. He was serving in the government. He was working for the king of Persia. And the beginning of Nehemiah begins with him meeting a man named Hanani and finding out that the Jewish people, his people, were returning to Jerusalem and the walls were still in shambles. They were broken. And after finding this out, he prayed to God. And then we can read what happens next. Nehemiah went to serve the king his wine. As usual, he would do this every day. But he was sad. And the verse says, "I had not been sad in his presence before." Let's read together what happened as Nehemiah writes in Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 2 to 5. "So the king asked me, 'Why does your face look so sad when you are not ill?' This can be nothing but sadness of the heart. I was very much afraid, but I said to the king, 'May the king live forever. Why should my face not look sad when the city where my ancestors are buried lies in ruins and its gates have been destroyed by fire?' The king said to me, 'What is it you want?' Then I prayed to the God of heaven. And I answered the king, 'If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city in Judah where my ancestors are buried so that I can rebuild it.'" Nehemiah had a big goal, inspired by a big problem. Nehemiah already knew Jerusalem had been destroyed. That was old news. But when Hananiah told him that the Jewish people were returning to Jerusalem and the walls were still in shambles, Nehemiah saw the problem. There was a practical problem. Without walls, God's people would be vulnerable to another attack. But there was also a spiritual problem because the city of Jerusalem was deeply connected with the Jewish people's relationship with God. And rebuilding the walls would be a way for them to honour God, but leaving them in shambles would be a sin against God. And Nehemiah wanted to see the whole nation of Israel turn back to God, and so he set a God-sized goal. Find a way to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem so God's people would be protected and God would be honoured. Jerusalem's troubles birthed in Nehemiah a goal that wouldn't just benefit himself, but would serve his people and his God too. His goal began with difficulty. Nehemiah didn't set this goal because he needed a cool New Year's resolution. He set it because he saw a problem that needed to be solved, and he believed that he could help solve it. And when Nehemiah identified the problem that needed to be solved, he grieved and he wept. Solving this problem wasn't just a fun hobby. It mattered deeply to him. The next thing is his goal began with prayer. As Nehemiah wept and was sad, he also fasted and prayed. Fasting is when you give up something for God, and in this case he would have given up food. He knew his goal was so big that he couldn't do it by himself. And before he made a single move, he asked God for wisdom, guidance, and help. And then he kept praying for months. The next thing is his goal began with God's help. Nehemiah stood up from his prayer and fasting, and he was determined to attempt a series of impossible tasks. He knew his wisdom and experience weren't enough to guarantee success, and so he asked God for help. The size of this goal, forced Nehemiah to put all of his faith in a God who could do what Nehemiah couldn't. And the book of Nehemiah begins with destruction, loss, grief, and tears. But that is not where this story is going to end. And when Nehemiah heard the news about Jerusalem's crumbling walls, he discovered an important truth. Big difficulties can inspire God-sized goals. Big difficulties can inspire God-sized goals. So why are we talking about this guy from 2,500 years ago? What do he and his walls have to do with us today? You know, there's so much to say about the story of Nehemiah. Countless books have been written about what his story can teach us about wisdom, leadership, and having a vision. And over the next few weeks, we're going to see what we can learn from him about setting and achieving goals, but not just any goals, God-sized goals. Remember that goal that you wrote down a few minutes ago? Take a look at it again. How does your goal compare to Nehemiah's goal? Is your goal inspired by a big difficulty? Does it solve a problem? Does it solve a problem that impacts anyone other than you? Or is your goal mostly about what you can gain? Is your goal inspired by prayer? Is it a goal you want for yourself, or is it a goal God wants for you too? Have you ever talked to God about this goal? Do you need God's help to accomplish that goal? You know, all of those things are usually a good indication of whether your goal is big enough. And if you're pretty sure you can accomplish the goal, it's a you-sized goal. A God-sized goal is a goal that likely seems impossible. Now, it's not hard to set a goal that benefits you. Most of us do that every New Year's Day. But those kind of goals are like running on a treadmill. And on a treadmill, some people can run for hours, logging tons of miles, burning loads of calories. But they aren't really going anywhere. No matter how many moves they make, they'll never leave the place where they started. And when we set us-sized goals, it's kind of like running on a treadmill. We don't really go anywhere, and we're the only ones that benefit. And so what's the alternative? How can we learn from Nehemiah and set God-sized goals that can change the world? The first thing is we can begin with difficulty. Now, I don't mean you need to cause yourself difficulty. I don't mean that you need to wait until something bad happens to you. There is difficulty happening all around us. We just have to open our eyes and notice. Maybe you've personally experienced difficulty like loss or bullying, discrimination, or difficulties with your family or health. Chances are some of you have experienced the same difficulties as each other. So how can you help? Maybe that's where your God-sized goal can begin. Or maybe you haven't experienced very much difficulty, but you can see plenty of problems in the world around you. People are hurting, they're struggling, and they're in pain. And maybe that's where your God-sized goal can begin, by focusing on the needs of others. We will often find our God-sized goals hidden within something we're passionate about. Like Nehemiah, our passions can often be inspired by the difficulties we see or experience. The next thing you can do is you can begin with prayer. If you're not sure what your God-sized goals could be, start by asking God to open your eyes to the people and needs around you. If you feel like God might be leading toward a need or a goal, share it with people you trust and see what they think. Wise people can help us set God-sized goals. And the third thing, we can begin with God's help. We'll need God's help if our goals are really God-sized. Just like Nehemiah was so desperate for God to do something, let's believe God can do impossible things through us too. And then ask God, give me the strength to do something about the pain, hurt, and difficulties all around me. Have you chosen a goal yet? Have you dreamed big enough? If you're not sure, that's okay. For the next few weeks, we're going on a journey to discover what kind of goals God might be calling us to pursue. Today is just the beginning. But this week, I hope you'll think about this question. What breaks my heart? Or maybe, what should break my heart? How can difficulty in your life or in the world around you inspire you to dream about what God can do and how you can help God do it? Now, I know the question, what are my goals for my life? Can be really scary, but instead of waiting around for inspiration or cues, what if you, like Nehemiah, looked around for problems that needed to be solved? Whether these problems impact you, others, or the whole world, big difficulties can inspire God-sized goals. I can't wait to see what kinds of God-sized goals you begin to pursue. But we're going to be heading over to Zoom now. Now, if you don't have the code, I'll be going to be putting it in the chat right now. And when you get onto Zoom, there'll be a little countdown on the screen, so there's time for everyone to join. After that, we're going to head into some small groups led by our wonderful young leaders. So I'll see you on Zoom.